This is Chapter 1, the need for payroll and personnel records. The learning objectives that we're going to cover in this chapter are we're going to identify various laws that affect the employers in their payroll operations. We will examine the record-keeping requirements of these laws. We'll also describe the employment procedures generally followed in a human resources department of a business. And we will recognize the various personnel records used by businesses and outline the type of information shown on each form. And we'll also identify the payroll register and the employee's earnings record. If you like, you can follow along in your textbook and highlight or make notes as we go along. So this is learning objective 1, and the payroll profession. There's a lot of jobs that are available because every company has to pay payroll. If a company has in-house payroll, they probably would have a payroll clerk that takes care of it, and the average payroll clerk salary is $37,000. They might have a lot of companies will outsource their payroll to companies like ADP, PayPro, Paychecks. There's a whole bunch of them, and so you could actually work in that profession and do very well for yourself. If you're going to stay in the field of payroll, you need to keep current. It's good to belong to an association, American Payroll Association, because it often will help you meet other people that are doing that and help you stay up on things. Also, there's a code of ethics that's going to set the direction for the profession, and pretty much all the accounting professions will have a code of ethics. And you may also want to subscribe to the payroll guide. It comes out every 2 weeks because things, believe it or not, are often changing. There's a lot of laws that are affecting payroll. Fair Labor Standards Act, the Federal Insurance Contribution Act, which is really FICA, Social Security is what that is, income tax withholding, federal, state, and local, and you have your unemployment tax acts, as well as fair employment laws, and then there's some other federal laws. There's laws that will state minimum wage and minimum hour laws, and other laws that are just for each state. We will focus here on the federal laws. So, Federal Wage and Hour Law of 1938, it's known as the FLSA. In it, the minimum wage is set, it's currently set at $7.25 an hour, and depends on, the state might have a higher minimum wage, and if they do, then you have to pay the higher state minimum wage. But in Utah right now it's $7.25. This is in 2013. Also equal pay for equal work, which basically says if somebody's doing the same work, it doesn't matter if they're a man or woman, you need to pay them the same amount of money. It also sets laws for companies that are doing business in more than one state, or if you're producing goods or performing services that will be going to or used in more than one state. It also requires that you have to maintain payroll records, and that, my friends, is your job security, because payroll records always have to be maintained, so there will always be a demand for people that understand payroll. We're going to go into more detail on this act in Chapter 2. There's the FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act. It's comprised of 2 different taxes, and both of these taxes are paid by the employer and the employee. The first one is the OASDI, Old Age and Survivors Trust Fund, and Federal Disability Insurance Fund, or Trust. So let me tell you a little bit about this. Old age is where this is known as Social Security, and it's where most of us, that's what we picture Social Security is what we get when we're old and retired. But the Survivors Trust Fund is for survivors, like if somebody dies, their survivors will often get money. My brother was hit by he was on his motorcycle and he was hit by a car a few years ago. He was 35. He had a wife and 3 children, and they are now getting Social Security, and it comes from this fund. So it's based on what he paid in, but also on his income when he died and the last 3 years of his income, and there's kind of a formula that they look at that I don't exactly know how it works. And then also the Federal Disability Insurance Trust. I have 2 siblings who are unable to work for health reasons, and so they receive disability, and it comes from this fund. There's also the Medicare, it's the health insurance plan, and Medicare is generally for any of the people that receive this. So old age, survivors, any on disability, they are eligible for Medicare. We'll talk about this more in Chapter 3. Income tax. This is a whole different deal. Income tax is based on the earnings of employees, and it's income tax. To pay this, it's withheld from the paychecks. And the government wants employers to withhold this because they want their money as you earn it. They don't want to wait till the end of the year or even to when you file your tax return, because most people would not have what they owe in income tax saved up in an account somewhere to pay. So the IRS requires the employees to withhold this from their employees' paychecks. State and local income tax, again, that's withheld from the paychecks. It's different in each state, and not all states have income tax. Nevada doesn't, Alaska doesn't, Wyoming doesn't. There's more, but I haven't got them all memorized. We'll go into that in more detail in Chapter 4. We have the Unemployment Tax Acts. This is FUTA, Federal Unemployment Tax. The employer's tax is paid on the first $7,000 that each employee earns per year, and after that it's not charged. These taxes are used to pay the federal and state administrative expenses, but they're not used to pay the benefits. So when you're unemployed and you get paid unemployment, it's not coming from these taxes. It's coming from the state taxes. SUTA stands for State Unemployment Tax Act, and employers have to pay the federal unemployment and the state unemployment. And the state unemployment is coming from the monies paid in for that. That's where you would pay, that's where you get your unemployment compensation from. We'll go into more detail on that in Chapter 5. Fair employment laws. The main one, major one, was Civil Rights Act of 1964, equal opportunity employment. Also, the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination in hiring, firing, promoting, or compensating based on color, race, religion, national origin, or gender. And I have to say, it's good that they don't do it based on height. Or rather, I should say, too bad that they don't have height in here, because I'm actually pretty short. I'm only 5 feet tall. And they've done studies to show that the taller you are in general, you tend to be viewed more favorable for employment. That's just a little side note. And these laws apply to employers who are employing 15 or more workers. So it's not for every single little employer. Civil Rights Act of 1991 basically allows companies to, they may have to pay damages if discrimination is intentional. Punitive damages mean punishment damages, basically. So they might have to, if they discriminated, they might have to pay back wages, and then that's it for Learning Objective 1. Tune in for Learning Objective 2.